people to join in as we're going through that. You are at the Hug webinar called Customizing Your Toolbar with Hot Buttons. And if we can go to the next slide. My name is Jennifer Thompson. I'm with HawkSoft User Group, as well as Amelia Yak, who is on as well. And if you have any questions that relate to Hug, our organization as a user group, you can contact us either by email or by phone. We want to let you know about a few things that are coming up. You can go on to the next slide. I guess this isn't coming up. This is something that you should just know about in general, which is the Hug website. If you haven't already, you may want to go out there to the Hug website, which is hawksoftusergroup.org, and create a login that allows you to access members-only content. So what's out there under the members-only content are letter and email templates, signature templates, customized list templates, and is another area that's called the Knowledge Library, which is just stuff that people have contributed to us, users. And we're going to have something that we post out there today from this webinar. We also want you to take a look at our Hug Facebook group. If you haven't joined that, that's a place where you can post questions to other users and respond to each other and just have conversation about the product. And if you want to go on to the next two slides, there we go, there's our Hug Facebook group. And then the next slide, which is our national conferences coming up. So San Diego in October 18th through the 19th, and registration is open now. And we encourage you to go out there. Amelia, do you have anything new to add about registration?
Yeah,
anything that they should know?
Yeah, the agenda is live and ready, and everybody should have gotten in their inbox today a brochure for the conference, a link to the agenda, how to book your rooms, all those kinds of things. So that all went out this morning. So we'd love to see you there. It's going to be a great conference. 50 different sessions, and the best part is you don't have to pick and choose. You can just attend 7 live, and then you can watch the other 43 after the fact. They'll be recorded if you've paid for the conference.
Well, that's the other thing. It's a hybrid conference, right, Amelia? So
Correct.
it's like people
so you
can
either attend
virtually
or in person. Yep.
Yeah, and even if you're attending in person, the great thing is when you attend, since we're recording all the other seminars, if you can't attend one, you can watch it at a later date. So we're trying something new this year, and we can't wait to get your feedback on it. And then last, before we turn this over to our presenters, we need a few housekeeping items, which are, number one, we are going to be recording this webinar. So if you have to step away for any reason, we will send you a link to this recorded webinar within 24 hours, and it will also be posted on the Hug website. Secondly, we need you to open up 2 buttons in the area, in the Ring Central area. We want you to open up the chat menu, and we want you to open up the Q&A. So chat is something where you can, if you just want to post a comment about what we're going through today, or if you have a technical problem, you can post it in chat. If you want to ask a question to our panelists, what we would like you to do is put it into the area called Q&A. When we have this many people on a webinar, trying to answer and follow the questions in the in the chat area becomes very difficult. Whereas if you post it in Q&A, we are able to indicate that we've responded to that question and move on, and then it just helps us make sure that we get your questions addressed. So use the Q&A feature for any questions to panelists. Chat is more just for commenting. And finally, our speakers today, we have Sarah Ferguson, who's out of Ohio from Belt Insurance. And then we also have Matthew Brauer from HawkSoft, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Sarah. Oh, we got you. You're muted, dear. You just
All right. Can you guys hear me now?
We can, yes. Perfect.
All right. Sorry, I didn't want to have any background noise when you were talking. So some topics we're going to talk about today is what is a hot button and the toolbar, what's the importance of having customized lists, and what actions to add as a hot button. We're going to go over how to add a hot button and how to customize the toolbar and what the benefits are of the hot button on the toolbar. So let me go ahead and switch over to my HawkSoft. All right, can you guys all see that now?
We actually are still seeing your the PowerPoint instead of.
Okay, one second.
While she's working on that, I'll just kind of fill in a little bit for anybody that have been on a demo with us, sales folks lately. We always go over these hot buttons, and they're the little buttons at the top that we show you. We always talk about like 2 clicks and how easy it is to get things done. So adding these hot buttons will really transform your HawkSoft experience. So very excited to be here in this webinar.
Great, and now I believe we are, Sarah, I am seeing your HawkSoft system now.
All right, perfect. So, sorry, I have 3 monitors and it kind of went wonky on me, so bear with me a little bit. All right, so this is, I first want to bring up the customized list options because you want to make sure that this is set up before you actually add any of your buttons. This is going to be what you use to, when you enter an activity in, these are going to be your options of what you add the activity in as. So for any of them that say communication, these are the options that you check. So like if you had a phone call from an insured, this is where you would be phone from insured, and then it's under the communications tab. You can actually enter in different actions that you might do or reasons for them calling. So if they called for a quote, or if they called, the lien holder called to verify coverage, for billing questions, if they called in a payment, they had a claim, etc. So there are defaults, but we do actually have we have customized ones in our agency to make sure that if we need to pull a report or if we need to see why we're getting the call, it just helps us identify what we need to do quickly with the action. And if you do have more than, you would need to do it for the home, you'd also need to do it for the clients, auto, any other type of line of business that you would be entering a communication on. And it's important to make sure that these are set up before you customize your toolbar because the action is what you're going to be putting up on the toolbar. So when you are determining what you want to put on the toolbar and make the hot buttons, you'd want to consider like what type of activities are you entering the most? Are you doing a lot of faxes? Are you doing emails, phone calls? Does your agency do text messaging? Is there a certain type of activity that you're tracking the most, that you want everyone to do it consistently? Are there different roles and different actions that the agency has? Are there sales, service, admins, clerks, etc.? So you just want to get a consensus over the entire agency and just see what are the most useful actions that you guys use, the most common, that would be easy to just enter in an activity quickly. So when you go to enter or create these hot buttons, then you would want to go to the settings, the little gear, and it's under General Configuration, and it's under your Action Menu Customize Toolbar. And there are some defaulted in there with the HawkSoft when you start up HawkSoft, but you can customize this. So I know when we started, and I started at the agency here, we did internal log pretty much for everything. And so you don't want to use internal log for everything because we want to make sure we know why the customer is calling. We want to know what action the person is doing. If you use internal log for everything, you're not going to be able to narrow down and see what you're doing on a regular basis. So when you're adding a hot button, you can just add new, and the button title is going to be whatever this action is going to be. Keep it short, keep it simple. If your agency has approved abbreviations, you can use the approved abbreviations on it. So let's just do a walk-in from insured payment. So let's see, walk-in payment. So the tooltip and the help text, that's just if you hover over the button, it's kind of going to give you a little bit more information. We actually don't even use these in our agency, so you can enter them in, you can leave it, it's completely up to you. The hotkey, if you wanted to be able to enter it in quickly without pressing a button or using your mouse, there is a control. You can press Control M. Let's just do M for money. And then you would want to choose if you're going to enter this in on a policy for all types of policies, if you want it on the client level. So choosing this is going to determine what type of, where you're going to be able to enter that action at. So if you have an auto policy, then the button is only going to be available if you are on the auto policy for a customer. If you're not on the auto policy, you won't be able to use the hot button. So that's why, you can either do all types of policies, or we usually do client and policy if it's a common thing that maybe they may have more than one policies that they're paying on at once. So we want to put that on the client tab. So that way if it's one entire payment, we can do it and keep track of it under the client. It's however your agency flows and whatever would work best for your agency. And then for the action here, let's say walk in from insured communication, and this is where you will see all of those communication that you entered. So if you did not have it in here, if you didn't have the option for payment, that's when you're going to have to go back to your customized list and enter the communication in to be able to add this payment in activity. So do we want to save this action sequence? Yes. Now the icons, these are all defaulted icons that are in HawkSoft, and not all of them show correctly. So if you find one and it's not working, let's say we choose hand for money. See, this one has a hand that it will show as the toolbar, on the toolbar. So if you are looking, the toolbar will only show you so many if you, hold on, let me make sure it's saved. So it'll only show you so many of the tool bars or the hot buttons. So if you have, it depends on your screen settings. So if you have a resolution size that is smaller or bigger. If you have a bigger resolution, it's not going to show a lot of the extra icons. So there will be a little button to the side right here that you would have to click in order to see it. So we're going to pull up a customer. And here is where the hot button would be if you have a smaller resolution. You could just enter walk-in payments, and it will bring up the entry to add a log. And then you could type payment for $100. And then that's how you would quickly enter that in. Now, the control button that you had selected, if you do Control M, it's going to do the same thing. So when you use the quick keys, that will also give you the chance to enter the activity in, which is the control, so you don't have to find the hot button.
And Sarah,
Now
we're getting some questions already before, so I think, can we take a pause and ask?
Yes, let's pause.
Let you answer a few of these. A couple people have asked this question. They wanted to know, when you're setting these buttons up, are these for the whole agency, or is this just for one person?
So this is for the entire agency. So that's why, you know, at the beginning I said, let's figure out what type of actions you use the most, and that's why you want to see what the different roles are, get feedback from everyone in the office who enters in activities in the client management system in HawkSoft. So it is for the entire agency. And I'm going to show you too ways that you can add these separators. Let's say sales uses certain buttons and service uses certain buttons. You can actually add separators to kind of keep them all together and group them.
Okay. And Timothy had asked a question, and I think we've kind of covered it, but I just want to make sure that everyone understood that. He said, can you provide an example of why you need to configure the communication piece before the hot button? And I think you kind of did that when you were going in to create the hot button and you got to the point, if there hadn't been an option for payment, you would have had to gone back and added it to your communication menu. So that's why setting up your communication menu first is important, because you can't create a button for a communication item if it doesn't exist.
Correct. Yes.
Right.
So, for example, like if you get a call, like a claim call, if you didn't have claim available there, you'd have to go back and enter it in,
right,
to the customized lists. And this is where it would be the communication. So that very last option that I had where it was payment down at the bottom, that is where I got this from, is this client communication menu.
Okay. And I think we had, I'm just trying to look and see. I just want to remind everybody that if you have questions, to please use the Q&A feature so that we can respond to them rather than typing them into the chat area. In the chat area, we have to try to kind of keep track of which ones we've answered and which ones we haven't, and it just makes it a little bit more confusing. If you use the Q&A button, we can keep track of that very well. And I'm going to just go back and look at a couple of the other questions. Somebody said, can each user modify what shows in their hot button options on the main page? I think that kind of comes back to no, they can't, right? Because it's for the whole agency.
Correct. Yeah. So the entire agency is going to see all of these hot buttons.
Right.
And so it's just going to be what you're going to have a meeting with your entire team and everyone who uses HawkSoft to see what's going to work best. And then if you put something in there and let's say you don't use it, you reassess it 3 months and nobody has used this button, there's no need to keep it in there. You can just delete it and kind of revamp it anytime you need to. And I did see somebody asked about certificates. Is there a way to list to get to a specific Accord form? Yes, you can. So I can show you that. So we do a lot of certificates. Of course, I'm sure anyone who has commercial customers are going to do certificates. So if I can show you how to add that as well. So if you go to the general configuration and in the action menu, so I'm going to remove this one. Let's say we get an email request for a customer to send us a certificate. So email request for certs. And then if you wanted to add a control key as well, whatever you're going to remember or use the most. Depending on what type of, you can do it on just commercials or others, or client and policy. Client and policy, you're going to have more options. It's going to be available on any type of the policy or client tab. It's going to be right here where you're looking if you see my mouse. So if you're on the client tab, it's going to work on the client tab. If you're on a policy tab, it's going to work on a policy tab. And then your action, if it's an email, then you can do email from insured, or if there's a cert holder, whoever is emailing you. And then here is the option for record forms, or the other one is you can do print create. And I'm always learning too. Matt showed me this one when we were practicing this, and you can actually print and certificate of liability. And do you want to save the sequence? Yes. And then you can do your icon again. I usually just pick something that makes sense. So if it's like an email, maybe a computer. And then here is where you can actually move it back up. So if we have a phone call request for certificate holders, here's your email request for certificate holders. So you can kind of arrange them any way you need to. And then let's go in and I can show you what it looks like. So if you're on there, you're going to have the option to pull your cert in quickly. So you don't have to go and fumble and click a bunch of buttons, if that answers your question.
Sarah, somebody asked, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you get a chance, somebody asked if you could show where that payment button was located again.
Yeah. So if you go to your customized list, so go to the gear and go to customized list, customized lists. This is where you're going to have it under your auto communication tab. You're going to have payment. And this is just an activity. So it's just you're putting a suspense or a login. That's how we note activities or payments in our agency. Every agency might be different, but we just put it in as a log. And you're going to have it under your client communication. There's the payment. Anything that ends with the word communication menu, when you're putting those hot buttons in and you are setting up your actions, it's going to pull from the communication menu when you're going through. So anything that you do on a regular basis, you're going to want to put on there. Like for example, we use, there's going to be with the recording, I actually put together some of the customized communication menus that our agency uses, just like what we use. Whether it's a change, if we added a vehicle, removed a vehicle, if we just added a driver, we have it set up specifically. So I will share that when they send out the HawkSoft recording, and you can, because I know that's something that when you're setting the system up, you don't really know what to use until you start using it. And when you're running the reports, if you want to know how many payments you get, then you can actually drill down and run a report specifically on that communication. Does that answer your question of where to find it?
Well, it was someone else's, but yeah, I'm sure it did.
Okay. No, but
Yeah, Sarah, I was just gonna say one question I've seen a couple times in the Q&A, just to point it out to everybody, is the questions come up, can we add like specific accord forms to do the print create without creating a hot button or like editing them? And I think when you guys are looking at the action menu, like when she's done that print create and you see like the certificate of liability, evidence of home, binder, for example, those are all hard coded in the action menu and you can't actually change those. Um, but hopefully that answers your question for some of the others that have asked that.
Okay, so one thing I do want to point out, and I don't know if everyone knows this, this is a huge help. When you are doing your customized list, let's say in the home, and you're doing a payment, if you see here, there is this little up arrow, and I know there is a name for it, but I don't remember it. If you put that before the letter, then it will actually allow you, when you're using your keyboard and on adding a log, you can just press P and it'll select that option for you. So I can kind of show you what that means. So like if you are even not using one of the hot buttons, if you're doing action, phone from insured, communication, you can actually just press P and it's going to put in the log. So I'm all about efficiency and entering in notes really quickly. So if you do, I can just press P, F, I, and then the communication is O, and then P. If this is something you do regularly, you can, without the hot buttons, you can just quickly do P, F, I, O, P, and that's going to put in this log without having to use your mouse. Now, one other thing that on the hot buttons is if you are entering in a hot button, you can actually stop. So let's say you just want to put that there was a phone call in. That's going to be your hot button. You can do phone call and select whichever policy or client and policy. You can do phone from insured communication, and you can stop it there. So that way, this entire list is going to pop up if you use that hot button. So you don't have to necessarily select one of the communications, but you can stop it right there, and it's going to save that sequence. So I can show you what that is going to look like. Let's just pull up a little icon. Okay. So if you are on here, and if you see how some of these are grayed out, it's because the action is not set for client and policy. It's only set for the policy. And that's when you're selecting if it's going to be for client, policy, or auto, or commercial, it's only going to be available to pull on those. So if you do phone call, it's going to stop right here at this action. So the quick button we just entered in is going to stop you. Now, let's say you don't want to have all of these to the side. If you want it to be, if you want to customize the actual toolbar itself, this is the toolbar, then if you aren't using some of them, you can remove them. I'm going to stop and see if there's any questions before I move on with this.
Yeah, one that was coming up, Sarah, you just covered it, was, hey, I've got hot buttons in there, but they're all grayed out. Why are they grayed out? And it's exactly like you just mentioned, Sarah. You either A, have to have a policy selected, or B, when you set up the hot button, if it was specific to like a certain policy only, then you'd have to have that policy type selected.
Yep. So like if you saw that phone call from the request for a cert, if you look here, all types are selected. So you have to be on a policy. You cannot be on the client. The only one that's going to do both is client and policy. So all types of policies, only client. This is going to do the client and the policy. So wherever you're at on the customer, it's going to pull in the activity option.
Perfect.
So that's why I usually just do client and policy, because sometimes we note on the policy tab and sometimes we note on the actual client tab. It's for various things. And then if you wanted to edit any of these, if you go to you highlight it and you press edit, and it's going to bring it up so you can edit the hot button. So let's say if I wanted to change this to client and policy, I can just go in there and quickly edit it. And then when you're wanting to customize the actual toolbar, there is this nice little separator that you can enter in. Like when I was saying that you might have different functions in the office, you might have somebody who does sales and somebody who does service, and the sales people use different activities. Let's say they need to enter a new client. So new customer. So you can do phone from insured, insert policy, or you can do, let's see, we'll just do insert policy, and then it's an auto. And let's see here. If you want to put something for just the sales department, you can move it up. Let's say they're going to be in the middle and you want to have a separator. You can just add a separator and you can arrange them. So if you need to enter just a new customer here, we're going to have a separator between the new customer and the other actions that an insured might do. Or that the service person might do. And then if you don't need any of these, you can actually just press remove and it's going to get rid of them for you. And then let's say there's something on here you don't use, or you use it differently, you can always go in there. This is actually one of the default ones, so you can't edit it, but you can delete it if you don't want to use it. And then so here, this is going to adjust how the toolbar is going to look. And then I did see somebody ask about running reports. And we do walk-in for customer payment, and we do a phone call from insured payment. So we have we in our agency use two separate activities. And this was huge when COVID hit, because we wanted to know how many customers are actually walking into the office and paying their bill, or how many customers are actually walking in. And that's why I say internal log. If you use internal log for everything, you're not going to be able to narrow down and kind of look at these reports. So we ran a report, and that was a determining factor on whether or not we were going to stay open and keep our office open during COVID or not. And we noticed it was the same people every single month coming in and paying the bill. So because we were using this hot button and because we were using this setup, we were able to see that it wasn't really necessary for us to be open to risk being out and being open. So I know there are other tutorials to run reports, so I'm not going to go super into that, but just know that that is why these are important to have, and have it laid out and everybody using the same, because if everybody's using the same activity, it's going to be easier to narrow down and run those reports and see how many of this action you're getting. Now, with the phone call from insured and the payment, we were able to see exactly how much time is someone spending taking payments a month. So we ran a report of all of the phone calls from the insured's payments action to see how many payments we're getting a month over the phone and how much time is being spent on it. Because if that is something that you're getting a lot of, but the company the company can take the payment from them, and you have a whole week that you're spending on just taking payments, this report is going to help you determine, efficiency, what's going to be the most efficient for your agency. And then I know the tooltip. So I know when we were talking about hovering over, I just want to kind of point out, if you can see, like right there is where the tooltip and help is going to be. So if you needed to add those, that's, for example, what it's going to look like. Are there any other questions right now?
So I fired through a bunch of them in there as well. Some of them were very specific, so.
Okay. I know somebody was asking again, or I think we answered that. So
I do want to point out, since we do have a quick moment then, Sarah, somebody asked like, can we edit the cancel button? And then there's a couple of other ones like the cancel, endorse. So if you go into the gear icon and go to where you could add and remove buttons, I just want to point out in here. So if you'll notice, we don't have one in there. But there's like your cancel button, your endorse button. There's some other ones that are in there that kind of come preloaded with HawkSoft. Those are hard-coded ones that create commissionable transactions in the system depending on your agency. I wouldn't necessarily go and remove them right away without talking to your bookkeeper or somebody else in the agency, because others may be using those buttons for commission tracking purposes. So if you do happen to have those or they're missing, our support team can help you get those added back if somebody removed them by accident. But before you remove any of those, make sure you check with the rest of your team.
thank you. Sorry.
Nope, perfect.
And then let me see.
So we have a question about how do you set up the manual hot button for carriers? And I'm trying to think what do you mean by that exactly?
Oh, that is actually something you have to. That is a completely different area. So that is this manual right here.
Mm-hmm.
That is, you have to go in and.
I believe it's in the policy company setup.
Yeah, I think it is
Yeah,
too.
because
I think
it's not
under
even
your
in
company.
here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you have to go in and find the link for everyone. So,
Yeah.
yeah, if that would be, I mean, you would have to like edit it, and then it's.
I think it's under the contact information.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Sorry. But yeah, if you're trying to set up the manual there, that's where you would do it. If you're trying to set up the link to the carrier website, you'll want to hit the company website in there, and then that's where you'll want to be able to set that up. That would allow you to use the website button in HawkSoft and launch the carrier site directly from the hot button.
And we had another question. Katie wants to know, is it possible to add more icons? And I think the answer to that is no, that those are a set number of icons that you have to choose from. You can't purchase or get your own icons that then can be used, correct?
Correct. Yep. That's exactly right,
Yep.
Jennifer. Yeah, for right now, those are the icons. I know some of them are a little older. Like if anybody goes in there, they see the little phone. It looks like the old brick cell phone we used to hold up. But no, those icons are the only ones you can choose from at this point. Sarah, do you know? can you set up a hot button for inserting a new quote? Because I know there's a hotkey for it that can be done, but I don't believe that there's a hot button that can be done for that.
So, like, is that insert a prospect?
Yep. Yeah, to insert like a prospect or a new customer to, because the hotkey for that would be control and then insert on the keyboard, allows you to put in a new customer. But I don't think there's one for the shortcut buttons.
I don't think there is either. Because I don't.
Because you have to have a client already created in order to add a hot button, correct? Because the hot button all keys off of what's on a client or a policy. So you wouldn't be able to set it up unless the client or prospect already existed.
Right.
Correct.
Exactly. Yeah, the best way to think about the hot buttons are for a current customer ways or prospect ways to get an activity in HawkSoft quickly without having to go to the action menu.
And I can pull up kind of the document that I'm going to send out. Let me see.
Matthew, Matt, is there a list of the keyboard shortcuts just within the help menu? Like the control, whatever,
Yeah, I know at conferences we have our mouse pad that have a whole bunch
of
of really
the
most common shortcuts.
Yeah.
I'm actually checking in the help menu for right now to see. I know there's a list for all the shortcuts. There it is. Yep. If you guys go to the help menu, the little question mark at the top right, if you were to type in shortcut, about 3 or 4 of them down, it says CMS keyboard shortcuts. I don't know how much of you know about this with Sean, but he doesn't like to use the mouse that much. So it's part of him coming into HawkSoft is he always makes sure there's lots of ways that you can navigate through HawkSoft without having to use the keyboard, without using the mouse that often.
What did you say it was?
So if you hit the little question mark at the top right, and you hit help, and then if you were to type in shortcut, and then about the 3rd or 4th one down, it'll say CMS keyboard shortcuts. As you can tell, there's a lot of them in there. We had to really narrow it down for those mouse pads.
I think we need to order more of those mouse pads for National. They're always a hot item.
Oh, they're wonderful.
Sarah, someone asked, can you expound on the manual icon?
Expand on it or
expound on it?
I'm sorry.
Expound on it, like discuss it more.
Okay. Yeah, so we don't use it in our office. This is going to be very carrier specific. We actually use OneNote for all of our manuals because it just works better for our agency. Personally, I know there's HawkSoft people listening, but the sites are extremely slow and it doesn't work for us. But if you were to enter the carrier information in their where you can find their manuals at, that's going to be like for Safeco. If you go to their website, I believe.
Yeah, so the manual I just figured out is under the company info. On the right-hand side, you see browse and test. That's for getting the different manual if you needed to pull up.
Right. So
the whole purpose of that is to take the person to the carrier's actual manual on their website so that if you needed to look something up regarding that company, processes, underwriting, whatever, that there is a link to it directly from your management system as opposed to having to go out there in a separate browser. Is that correct?
Well, that one's actually linking you to a file. So this is if the carrier provided you like an underwriting manual or file, which they don't do that often any longer. This would be putting a file that'd be saved on the server somewhere that would give you quick access to a specific file that the carrier gave you. Maybe they have new underwriting rules regarding wind,
I see.
And then you could then save that somewhere in there, and then you'd be able to select that and have that like a PDF pulled up by clicking that manual button. But for the most part, a lot of the agencies are using the Hawk link, and I don't want to make this whole thing about Hawk link. But if you guys do find it slow, they just added the new version, the Hawk link for Google Chrome.
Okay.
That one we found a lot faster response times. So I don't want to open up that
Kathy
can of
wanted
worms.
to, that's okay. Kathy wanted to know if you can remove the separators because they're taking up too much space. You can remove those,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, you can completely customize it. So you would just go in there and remove it just like you would remove any other actions that you don't use.
One other question we had was as far as the communication menu, and I know I had trouble with this when I first joined HawkSoft 9 years ago. I'm like, okay, I added something in the communication menu. Why am I not seeing it there? Sarah, I think you know the reason for that is there's a lot of different communication menus based off of your policy type.
Mm-hmm. So if you have to be on an auto, so the only way that is going to work is if you are on in a specific auto tab. Whereas you would, if let's say you're trying to add an activity on the client policy screen or the client screen, you're not going to have the same options as if you, let's say, phone from insured communication. You're not going to have the same options here as if you have set up on your auto tab. So that communication area and where you're entering in those different options, see how these options are different than the options on the client tab. So if you want to be able to enter that activity in on every single policy and on the client tab, you're going to have to add it to all of those communication areas.
And I think there's a couple of them. There's like for the auto, the home, the commercial, the client. So yes, I understand that's a lot of duplicate work for anybody else, for everybody that's listening, but it is something, again, just as you guys know, once you set it up, then it's all set.
Kelly Endicott said, for our agency, they use the manual a lot. You just go to the carrier site and get the auto manual page, copy that URL, and put it in the carrier setup under the auto tab. So that way when your users click on it, they are on the auto tab. It will go directly to that carrier manual page. Same thing for the home, commercial, etc. It takes some time, but it can be helpful.
Wow, that's a great use for it. Thank you, Kelly, for sharing. I'll have to remember that. I'll have to set up my demo for that too.
And Matt, do you think Ralph had a question he was saying about having difficulty setting up his auto communication list? Do you think that had to do with maybe not being on the right list when you're creating, or the right policy?
It is. It's the right policy, and it's a matter of going in here where Sarah is and going through each one of the different communication menus through here and adding the different items that you want there. Like she showed you, there's the auto, there's your home, there's your MoPro. So you do have to kind of go through, like I said, I know it's a little bit of extra duplicate effort, but you do have to go through there and do that.
Sure. Right. So Ralph, if you're not seeing something, it's probably just because there's a disconnect between which menu you added and what policy you're on, and then how you set up that button. And if you need help with that, that's probably something you could give support a call with, going through that specific scenario. Support could help you work, narrow down where the problem is.
And then
I see we're getting a few questions that are a little bit off topic. I don't know if we want to go down all those things. Like Bill was saying, can you add company? I don't know, Matt, maybe you can answer the questions very quickly, but Bill wants to know, can you add company-specific websites under external tools?
Yeah, so you can. It's actually kind of funny. Under on my HawkSoft on my external tools, I have like Zillow set up. I'll have maybe Google Maps set up, and then just so I get the questions when people are looking at demos, I'll put like Chinese takeout. So I have like my favorite Chinese takeout set up there. So the external tools is it is a user specific or computer specific setting in HawkSoft that allows you to set up websites in the program that you can launch from anywhere. Support can help you with that. Here's a great thing. I love where Sarah's going right now. So you have those checkboxes there that you can do so it doesn't have to load all 6,000 every time. But the really neat thing you can do is you can also set up your own categories. So like Linda taught me this, is you can create like a short list. Exactly. So in your setup there, you can create a category, and so you can
Like
go ahead and create a new
personal
category.
Lines or something like that, like a category called personal lines or personal,
it could be,
or
yeah, it could be
lines,
like general liability or work comp, or I mean something like that, where basically what all you do, you select a list, and every accord form that you're going to need for that type of policy would populate there automatically. So it's a really neat way to, instead of having to wait for all of them to load, you can really narrow that down. And especially if you have newer employees that don't know the commercial side as well, they may not know that they need, the application, the 126 and other things for like a GL policy. You can have kind of that list pre-built for them.
And where did you go to start that, Sarah? Can you show me where you started that?
So if you're in the to pull a policy for, or if you're pulling up a form, like an accord form, you would just go to New, and then you can go Set Up at the bottom right.
Great.
And then you can add lists, remove a list, and then you can just select which forms you want to use.
And I can tell you guys kind of a sneak peek. We have an update where we're trying to revamp this and make it even faster and better, as far internally. So I do expect in a future update for HawkSoft, you're going to see some changes to this. Can't promise any timing on that, but just so you guys know, I do know it's being worked on.
And Heather wanted to know if those, when you're setting up those categories, is that for everybody or is that for a specific user?
That's global. So it's anybody in the agency.
And then, Rosie, did you still need me to show you from the beginning where to go?
I'm thinking she was kind of asking the same thing I had asked, which is, where did you go to make those categories, which was once you were in, you had to get to the point where you were using an action menu.
You just have to, yeah, so like phone, from, insured, and then this is where you can get your forms. So you just go to Accord Forms, and you go to New, and then you can either show the forms applicable to your policy type, and then if you wanted to add a list, you can go to Setup, and then this is where you would add a list. You just do New, and select which forms you would want to add to your list. So and then close. And then I'm only going to see this on there.
Sure.
Okay. Does that help?
I think that's exactly where we were talking about. So kind of wrapping up, I think we're getting close to being on for an hour, so we've gone over a little bit, but with the hot buttons, the things that I saw that you were talking about, Sarah, is that what it really helped you guys to do was get away from always adding everything, starting all your activities as internal, internal logs. It got you to the point where you were actually identifying your actions, but by creating these hot buttons, you were able to do it really quickly, and everybody was doing it the same way, and it cut down on the number of steps or clicks that you guys had to do.
Mhm.
And so that was
so like if
one of the
I
big,
wanted to do a claim call, it would just, I would have to click that button instead of going through the action and trying to find where it's at. I can just, they called in about a claim, I just click there.
right, so greatly reduces the number of clicks that you have to do the most common actions that you're doing within your system. And then
Yep.
kind of
So
as an added benefit, you said you were able to then run reports that told you stuff about your agency.
yep, and narrow down how many calls we're getting on a specific topic. So for example, payments. So
Right. Is there anything else you want to add right now? We are going to send out the recorded webinar as well as Sarah's document that's going to show what her hot buttons are. But Sarah, do you have anything else you want to add?
I just thank everyone for being on here. I don't have anything else to add other than if they have more questions. So I think I appreciate you guys taking the time and letting me show.
You did great,
And
Sarah.
Matt, do you have? Yes, thank you so much, Matt and Sarah, for presenting today and sharing this information. As I said, we will get the recording out to everybody later today. And thank you all for attending today. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
We're going to log off.
Thanks,
Have a
Sarah.
nice day. Bye.
Bye.